Just recently, Arrow released the 4K edition of Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, one of the big hitters of the 1990s, starring Kevin Costner and the late great Alan Rickman. I reviewed the film on my channel over 10 years ago, and I thought it would be a good idea to go back to the film and discuss my thoughts on it and review this new Blu-ray. Arrow, as of late, hasn't had the best track record, with many of their discs having issues with replacement programs being set up for customers to change their faulty Blu-rays. They no longer issue a regular Blu-ray with their 4K sets, and their lineup for the past 12 months has been a bit lackluster for me personally. For the end of this year, two titles did grab my attention, with the remaster of Doug Trumbull's sci-fi classic Silent Running, and of course, Robin Hood. Robin Hood has been issued on every format, most often early in the lives of these formats hitting the market, but surprisingly it took a while to hit 4K, despite it being a massive hit in 1991, and in part thanks to the popular song by Bryan Adams. This new set brings over the special features from the previous editions, such as the audio commentaries on the extended cut, the original making of, which features great behind the scenes material and interviews from that time, and is hosted by Pierce Brosnan, who goes full Alan Partridge in it. It's unintentionally funny. But it also includes a new documentary with interviews with the crew and one member of the cast. Sadly, no new interviews with Costner, director Kevin Reynolds, Morgan Freeman, and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. The set also includes a detailed book featuring images, an essay on the film and its star Kevin Costner, with production design stills and some additional postcards, which in all is a nice inclusion. As with many of the Arrow sets, they come with a poster, which features the new cover design. The Blu-ray also includes a reversible sleeve featuring the original poster. So does the 4K remaster make a big improvement over the previous Blu-ray? Well, Robin Hood has never been considered a stunning looking film. It's never going to blow your socks off due to its visual style of making use of loads of muddy browns, greens and beige colours, in keeping with the times. It's designed to look rough around the edges. When it does have colourful moments, however, the 4K transfer really pops. Skin tones look warmer compared to the previous releases, which seemed pale and washed out. There is definitely an improvement in sharpness and detail. There is a fine balance of grain to keep the picture close to its original 35mm presentation, so it's the best the film has ever looked on home media. The Blu-ray comes with two audio tracks, with one in 5.1 DTS HD, which seems to be the old mix from the Blu-ray from 2009, which had a Dolby HD track, so I'm guessing it's just been encoded into DTS. It also includes a 2.0 stereo mix, making use of the original Dolby surround track. The film hit cinemas before the introduction of Dolby Digital Audio, and the film never got a 70mm presentation to take advantage of Dolby 6-track surround sound. Comparing the two mixes, I think the original 2.0 is actually better. The dialogue is punchier, and the overall volume of the mix seems louder. Whereas the DTS has the advantage of separate channels for the front and rear, it sounds a tad quieter and less dynamic. So I would recommend watching it in stereo with the Dolby Surround option selected on your amp or receiver. Robin Hood, I believe, was the second film I saw at the cinema. I saw it back in the summer of 1991 with my family on our yearly visit to Cornwall. I recall my parents complaining how dark and violent it was for a PG. Seeing that guy's hand be cut off at the start and seeing people being hanged at the end was quite shocking, and the sheriff attempting to have his way with Maid Marian was pretty strong for a family-friendly movie, though I do believe the film had some minor cuts to get a PG classification. The film would be later classified A12 when it came to Blu-ray. Being 8 years old, I loved the violence, and in the summer of 1991, I was all about Robin Hood. I grabbed a bow and arrow to play with on holiday and grabbed two action figures from the new range from Kenner. But my love of the movie died out when Ninja Turtles 2 came along not long after, because I was still obsessed with Ninja Turtles at that age. That summer though was dominated by Bryan Adams' song Everything I Do It For You, which was a massive hit worldwide and remained at the #1 spot in the UK for 16 weeks. By the end, radio hosts were refusing to play it as they had got sick of it, but the public still couldn't get enough of it. Strangely, the music video is not available on YouTube. It's not on the DVD or subsequent Blu-rays. All you get is the live performance in Ireland. And on Bryan Adams' official YouTube channel, it's another live performance. It must be some licensing issue, which I find odd, but it is on the Laserdisc. Well, 1 point to Laserdisc, I suppose. At the time, this was seen as a gritty, dark reboot of Robin Hood, very much like Batman from 2 years earlier. But over the years, critics seem to see it as a bit campy, a complete change of attitude towards it. The dark, muted photography and violence is still in keeping with its darker approach, but the film has bucket loads of British humour, and with Alan Rickman totally hamming it up, it's hard not to see it as a bit of campy fun. Over the years I found it funny that Costner struggled to do an English accent. There are moments here and there where he is trying early on into shooting but clearly gives up. But from reading reports at the time, Costner wanted to do an accent, but director Reynolds felt it would be distracting, and their indecision resulted in drastically uneven delivery between each scene. Entertainment Weekly reported, even before it was finished, Costner was the subject of embarrassing rumours that his performance was too laid back and his accent was more LA than UK. Alan Rickman clearly steals the film, having some of the best lines of dialogue.
I'm gonna cut your heart out with a spoon!
And would win a BAFTA for his performance, but that doesn't make Costner's overall performance bad or forgettable. He's always had that likeable persona, and nails the emotional moments and does the heroic stuff with ease, and of course he is rocking a bit of a mullet, which does seem to suit him. Mary really nails the performance of Maid Marian. She is totally believable in the role, and holds her own against Rickman and Costner. The new documentary brings a lot of interesting facts to the table, such as Costner being offered 3 Robin Hood films at the time, one from 20th Century Fox, TriStar Pictures and Warner Brothers. He would of course go with Warner's, preferring their script. The Fox film would go into production at the same time, starring Patrick Bergin. John McTiernan was originally going to direct it, but John Irvin, who directed Raw Deal, would take on the duties, with McTiernan staying on as an executive producer. It would get theatrically released worldwide, but not in the USA, and went straight to cable, making it pretty much forgotten as Prince of Thieves dominated the box office and any discussion on the subject of Robin Hood. The TriStar production would end up being cancelled. It also explores Michael Kamen's work with interviews with his orchestrators. It's a lengthy chapter which is really interesting. The writers and producers discuss their difficulties making it and finding the right talent to get on board, with interviews from costume designer John Bloomfield, editor Peter Boyle, who would later edit Waterworld and The Postman, cameraman Douglas Milsom, who photographed Full Metal Jacket, and set decorator Peter Young, who I interviewed for my Superman 4 documentary a few years back. Both he and John Bloomfield worked on The Quest for Peace. The documentary also mentions Kevin Reynolds leaving the production during the final stage of editing. It's never revealed why he left, which is a bit disappointing, but from reports I read online, it seems he wasn't happy with the studio wanting changes to the film, and I believe his editor was locked out of the main edit, and Stuart Baird was brought on to take over. Some recent Arrow documentaries, including this one, include a couple of interviews that appear slightly out of focus. It's like they set the camera to manual focus and the interviewee moved a tad and it was never corrected. A bit of a shame considering the other interviews are nice and sharp. Despite those minor gripes, it's a really informative retrospective that is worth a watch, and it's nice to have a perspective from the British crew. The Arrow set comes with the theatrical and extended cut. I was happy to see the original cut included, as it's been excluded from any set since the early DVD release in the UK. I was never a huge fan of the extended cut, showing that the witch was the Sheriff of Nottingham's mother. I preferred if it was kept a mystery, and I think extending it by like a further 12 minutes made the overall lengthy runtime a bit of a slog. Despite the movie being historically inaccurate and the geography of the UK being totally muddled up, it's honestly still the best Robin Hood film. The final act is superb, it's an intense emotional rollercoaster with some incredible editing, and Michael Kamen's score just makes it so epic. I've rewatched this scene so many times, getting me a bit choked up seeing Little John desperately trying to save his son as their plans get screwed up when Will Scarlet is to be executed as well. Seeing Little John use all his strength to save his friends and his son. The scene also contains the most iconic moment from 90s cinema, with Robin saving his brother at the last second, firing his arrow in slow motion with the whole background on fire. Incredible photography. Other films have come along, such as Men in Tights, which spoofs Prince of Thieves. It's not a bad comedy, but does have many jokes that fall flat, and they also fail to take advantage of Dave Chappelle's talents as a comedian.
Sorry.
The Ridley Scott film from 2010, which acted as a prequel to the events of what we come to expect from a Robin Hood adventure, took itself so seriously, resulting in a bit of a bore fest, but it still has one of the best theatrical trailers thanks to its brilliant music and rhythm to its editing. Eight years later, we got another film starring Taron Egerton. This new adaptation of Robin Hood was a massive turkey and a commercial flop. Speaking of trailers, if you go watch the teaser for Prince of Thieves, which has music from Willow in it, it contains the full sequence of Robin Hood firing his arrow with the camera following it as it slams into a tree. I believe this was shot specifically for the teaser trailer, but it does make an appearance in the film but slightly cut down. I think this new set is certainly worth getting for the visual upgrade, but also for the new documentary. As the movie made little use of optical effects, the film still holds up visually. The humour still works a treat. I think the film contains Alan Rickman's finest performance as a villain, because he is clearly having so much fun with the part.
Sorry to keep you hanging about.
And the slick editing when it comes to the action makes the big sequences exciting to watch. Certainly one of the most memorable films of the 1990s, and it still remains the most entertaining Robin Hood film to date. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and click the bell to be notified of my latest retrospectives and reviews. Big thanks to my patrons for supporting the channel. If you want to get involved and gain early access to my content and exclusive videos, then follow the link below.